Welcome to VSO W. Today, we're really diving deep into something that's just everywhere now, isn't it? This explosion of AI-generated content. We received a fascinating stack of sources. We've got comprehensive insights from Forbes on, content quality. We also have critical academic essays, one from the United Nations University, another from Audrey Waters, and even some candid real-world discussions from places like Reddit. So our mission today is to properly unpack what all this means for you as you try to navigate this, increasingly AI-permeated world. We'll look at the potential, definitely, but also the pitfalls, especially this growing concern known as AI slop.
Indeed. And the sheer speed, the proliferation of this AI content, it brings a really crucial need for critical evaluation. We're going to explore why just generating content quickly, churning it out, it just isn't enough. And maybe more importantly, how all of us as users, as consumers of information, really need to develop new frameworks for assessing not just quality on the surface, but, its truthfulness. It's about getting beyond the superficial to understand the underlying mechanisms and their bigger societal impact. We'll be drawing heavily on these sources to give you that full picture.
Okay, let's start unpacking this then. So our sources are all saying AI is churning out content like never before. It feels like it's accelerating daily. So just to set the stage, what exactly are we talking about when we say AI-generated content, and why is there suddenly this big concern about its quality? What's driving this?
That's a really good place to start because it's not theoretical anymore, is it? It's the reality of our digital lives now. So AI-generated content, we're talking about text, images, audio, even video created mostly or sometimes entirely by AI models. These models, they learn from huge data sets of human-created stuff, and then they generate new content based on the patterns they've found. Now, the Forbes article, the one titled 20 Questions to Ensure the Quality of AI-Generated Content, it really highlights the speed, this acceleration. It notes AI's ability to churn out content quickly. It's fast, no doubt, but, and this is the crucial point they make immediately, this content often requires human intervention.
The human element.
Exactly. Intervention to make sure it sounds authentic to a brand, resonates with readers, and provides real value. Without that human touch, that critical eye, their output can be pretty bland, uninspired. And that brings us straight to this concept of AI slop. It's a thread running through all our source material.
Okay, so AI slop. It's not just a dismissive term then. It describes something specific with actual consequences. Could you define it a bit more clearly and maybe give us a sense of what this slop actually looks like?
Absolutely. Defining it is key. There's a SearchStax article, The Rise of AI Slop, which gives a really clear definition. It calls AI slop the flood of low-quality media ranging from writing to images generated by artificial intelligence technologies. Simple as that. But it's not just an abstract issue. SearchStax really emphasizes how widespread it's become. It says it's starting to interfere with essential services.
Essential services, like what?
Well, think about social media updates during a crisis or trying to find vital information. Imagine, like they suggest, searching for hurricane shelters in Miami during a storm and getting back these unreliable AI-generated lists that might mislead you or just waste your time when time is critical.
Wow, okay. That's serious.
It is. SearchStack says it impacts everything from those updates to finding that crucial info. It highlights the tangible, immediate impact of this low-quality, often untrustworthy output. It's not just annoying, it can be genuinely harmful.
That definitely makes the term more concrete. So if we're encountering this stuff everywhere, what are the telltale signs? How can you spot it?
Okay, so looking across the sources, especially Forbes and the Reddit discussion, several characteristics of AI slop keep coming up. They're quite identifiable once you know what to look for. First, and often the most obvious, is a real lack of authenticity and human touch. The Forbes piece hammers this point home. For content to work, it must feel authentic and sound like the person, brand, or business it reflects. Without that critical eye and a human touch, AI tools just fall short.
You miss the nuance.
Exactly. Forbes offers a great test. If you change the brand name in the content, would it still work without requiring edits? If the answer is yes, Forbes argues, then that's a huge red flag. It's probably generic slop, lacking any real identity or voice, like a template.
Right, interchangeable content.
Yeah.
That lack of a unique voice really stands out. What else signals AI slop?
That interchangeability is key, yeah. Building on that, the second big characteristic is that it's often just generic and surface-level information. The Reddit discussion, the one titled, "Can we please have a rule against obvious AI slop?" gives a fantastic, really stark example. A user there showed how AI text tends to be overly general, lack specificity, and feel disconnected from genuine curiosity or lived experience. And to really drive the point home, this user compared their own human-written explanation, just 48 words, concise, to the AI version.
How long was the AI one?
Get this, 289 words to say essentially the same thing. It just
Wow.
vividly shows AI's tendency to be verbose, wordy, without adding actual substance, depth, or specific insight. Lots of words, not much value. It tells you a lot about AI needing that human guidance to be truly efficient and meaningful.
That's quite a difference. More words, less actual meaning. It's like padding, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. Padding without enrichment. And that leads right into the third characteristic, redundancy and lack of unique value. Forbes digs into this too. It asks questions like, does it provide unique value beyond what AI can generate alone? And also, critically, has most of this information been published before?
So just recycling old stuff.
Often, yes. Forbes contends that AI content frequently recycles overused anecdotes and generic data that won't set you apart. Think about it. How many articles have you read on, say, productivity tips that all say the exact same thing? Use the same examples. AI is great at compiling existing information quickly, but it struggles to synthesize it into something truly new or distinctive. It leads to content feeling derivative, not original. It's more echo chamber than fresh perspective.
And if it's just recycling, that naturally makes you question how trustworthy it is, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And that brings us to probably the most critical, the most concerning characteristic, misinformation and untrustworthiness. Both search stacks and that Reddit thread really highlight AI Slop's scary ability to spread misinformation. Search stacks specifically points to its impact on digital content trust and reliability. They state pretty bluntly that it's further muddying the waters and making it harder than ever to find accurate information online. And then Forbes adds another layer of danger here. It mentions that AI often hallucinates.
Hallucinates.
Yeah, it produces outputs that sound completely believable, totally plausible, but they may not reflect reality. It essentially invents facts or details.
Oh, it makes things up.
Convincingly, yes, that's the problem. It's one thing for content to be generic. It's quite another for it to be factually wrong while sounding completely authoritative. That's a huge challenge for information integrity.
That is really worrying. Convincingly wrong is almost worse than just being obviously wrong. It's insidious.
Exactly. And then finally, there's a characteristic that's often just noticeable, especially in writing. It's the stiff and soulless tone. Forbes advises creators to literally ask themselves, does this read like a robot wrote it? And if it feels stiff, generic, or soulless, they strongly recommend tweaking it. And the reason they give is fundamental. Readers connect with personality, not predictability.
Right, that human connection.
Precisely. It underscores that essential human element, the nuance, the empathy, the unique voice, the emotional resonance that AI, just by its nature, really struggles to replicate. That lack of genuine human touch, that spark, it's a clear hallmark of AI slop. It misses that natural conversational flow we expect from people.
That's a really thorough breakdown of what AI slop looks like, and it leads us perfectly into something you touched on earlier, this crucial but maybe often missed distinction, the difference between something being accurate and something being true. This feels really subtle but incredibly important. Can you elaborate on that? Why is getting this distinction right so vital?
Yes, this is, I think, perhaps one of the most profound points raised across our sources. It's a critical distinction. The United Nations University article, the one titled, "Never Assume That the Accuracy of Artificial Intelligence Information Equals the Truth," tackles this directly, and it puts it very starkly. When accuracy is confused with truth, there is high risk of harm, especially in fields where human judgment and ethical considerations are critical.
High risk of harm. Okay.
It really sets the stage for understanding AI's limits and the potential dangers if we just take its output at face value.
So let's break those terms down properly, starting with accuracy. What does accuracy actually mean when we're talking about AI?
Right. Defining accuracy in AI first is crucial, as the UNU article explains it. Accuracy in this context essentially refers to aligning predictions with a given set of data or expected outcomes. It's described very much as a technical measure, quantifiable and concrete. And because it's measurable, it gives this sense of reliability and dependability. The article uses a good example. An AI model predicting stock market trends. It might achieve high accuracy based on historical data.
So it matches past patterns well.
Exactly. It might correctly predict price movements based on patterns it learned from years of trading data. Its predictions might align very closely with what did happen in the past under similar conditions. However, and this is the absolute key point, this technical accuracy doesn't automatically mean it's true in the real forward-looking sense. Because, as the UNU article explains, the real world has unpredictable factors. Things like an unexpected political event or a company's internal scandal caused by information asymmetry. These things can completely throw off the historical patterns. So the prediction, while accurate based on the training data, becomes untrue in the actual unfolding market. The model might be technically correct within its data bubble, but it fails to account for these unforeseen, often discrete, real-world events that actually determine the outcome.
That's a really clear distinction. Accuracy is about performance against its data, against patterns. But truth is about aligning with, well, reality. How does the UNU define truth, then, specifically in this AI context?
Well, in contrast to that technical accuracy, truth in the AI context, as the UNU defines it, encompasses nuanced, qualitative aspects that the MSE cannot capture because it is based on numerical deviation. Mean square error. We'll get to that. But the point is, truth involves these nuances, these qualities that a simple numerical measure misses. The article stresses that truth is discrete, not continuous. This is fundamental. It uses a very simple, powerful example, being born in Duthuni village. That's either true or false. There's no in-between. You can't be 81.3% born there.
Right, it's a yes or no.
Exactly, a binary absolute state. And that's very different from continuous values. Like temperature, it can be 20.1 degrees Celsius. Or like a doctor's diagnosis accuracy, which could be 81.3%, meaning they got it right 813 times out of 1,000. Truth, in this UNU framework, isn't on a percentage scale, it's absolute. A definite yes or no. Accuracy, however, can be a gradient, a percentage.
Okay, that distinction between discrete truth and continuous accuracy makes sense. But what's the underlying technical reason AI gets these confused? Why does it struggle with this yes-no idea of truth?
The UNU article points a finger directly at the mean square error, MSE, as a key reason why AI confuses truth and accuracy. So, MSE is a very common statistical metric. AI uses it a lot to measure prediction accuracy, especially for continuous numerical predictions, like predicting a house price or temperature. It basically measures the average squared difference between the AI's predicted value and the actual value. It's really good at telling you how close a numerical prediction is on average.
So it's good for how close, but not is it right or wrong?
Precisely. The article critically notes that MSE is not good at assessing discrete or abstract concepts such as truth. There's this fundamental mismatch, you see, between the mathematical tools AI often relies on, which are great for continuous values, and the complex, often binary, often qualitative nature of truth in our human world. Models optimized using MSE get very good at being close numerically, but they lack the built-in understanding to determine if an answer aligns with a definitive true or false state, especially for non-numerical facts or abstract concepts.
Wow. So this basic disconnect, how AI measures rightness versus how we understand truth, that sounds like it could lead to some really serious problems in the real world. Can you give us some examples of where this confusion becomes dangerous?
Oh, absolutely. The real-world consequences are significant and sometimes, frankly, quite alarming. The UNU article and others detail several areas. Take workplace performance, for instance. An AI might be used to accurately forecast an employee's future performance. It looks at quantifiable data, hours logged, emails sent, and tasks completed. And based on past output, it might be highly accurate at predicting, say, how many tasks they'll complete next quarter.
Seems objective, right?
On the surface, yes. But as the UNU points out, this narrow set of accurate metrics completely misses the underlying truth about an employee's well-being, job satisfaction, or ethical behavior. It might totally overlook crucial human factors, like someone heading for burnout, or maybe their most valuable contributions are innovative ideas, not easily counted tasks. Or complex team dynamics. The AI, just crunching the numbers it's given, may be unable to predict these vital elements. So the accurate data paints an incomplete, potentially misleading, and ultimately untrue picture of the employee's real situation or potential. Management decisions based on that could be seriously flawed.
That's a really stark example. Accurate data, but fundamentally incomplete truth. What other real-world impacts does this have?
Well, it leads directly to biased outcomes. This is a huge ethical red flag in AI right now. If AI systems rely only on data that is accurate but incomplete or historically skewed, they risk reinforcing biases and ignoring critical human factors, resulting in unfair or ineffective decisions. The UNU article stresses a critical point. AI trained on biased data will produce biased results regardless of how accurate its predictions appear.
So even if the AI is technically accurate according to its own metrics?
If the data it learned from reflects historical or societal biases, the AI won't just replicate those biases, it can actually amplify them, making things even more unfair. Think about AI in the justice system. If it's trained on historical arrest data, which already reflects societal biases, it might accurately predict based on that data, but end up disproportionately flagging people from certain groups as high risk. It mirrors the bias. It doesn't find objective truth about individual risk.
That's genuinely alarming. The idea that AI can bake in and even worsen existing unfairness, all while looking technically accurate?
And we see this play out disturbingly often. The issue of personal identity and hallucinations provides another really compelling example, right from the UNU article itself. The author shares a personal story. They asked Google Gemini, "Who is Shianio Marwala?" The AI came back with the detailed, seemingly highly accurate biography. The problem, it was the biography of Shalizi Marwala, who has a much larger online footprint.
So it got the wrong person.
Exactly. The information about Shalizi was factually correct, accurate for him, but it was not true for Shiano, the grandmother the author actually asked about. And the author draws a chilling conclusion. Scenarios like these should make us extremely cautious. Consider the implications. Had I asked about a specific medical diagnosis, they could have life-threatening consequences.
Wow, yeah.
It highlights that accuracy about the wrong thing is not truth. It's a convincing falsehood. And Forbes echoes this, remember, noting AI often hallucinates, producing believable but unreal outputs.
That is a terrifying thought, especially in high-stakes areas like medicine. What about more systemic examples, maybe in the corporate world?
A classic, widely discussed example of this accuracy-truth confusion leading to systemic bias is in hiring. The UNU article brings up the famous case of Amazon's AI recruitment tool. It was designed to screen CVs based on historical hiring data, trying to automate the process. And it was accurate based on Amazon's past hiring patterns, which heavily favored men. But what happened?
It became biased.
Exactly. It was found to be sexist and biased against female candidates. Why? Because the historical data it learned from was skewed. As a result, the AI incorrectly downgraded CVs that use terms more commonly found on women's resumes, such as women's chess club captain, even though those terms had nothing to do with competence.
Oh, wow.
This case just powerfully shows how AI accuracy based on historical data does not reflect the truth that women and men are equally talented. It learned and automated human bias rather than finding objective truth about candidate quality.
That's incredibly sobering stuff. Okay, so stepping back, what does all this mean for us, for you listening, in our everyday lives? Beyond the definitions in these specific cases, how is this AI slop actually impacting how we find information, how we learn, maybe even our society overall? Where do we feel the effects most?
Well, connecting all these dots, the impact is significant. It's far-reaching. It's seeping into various parts of our information world and even our social structures. The sources give some very concrete, sometimes worrying examples of how this is playing out right now. A really immediate concern is the erosion of trust in information discovery. That SearchStack's article paints a vivid picture, using that hypothetical but very realistic example of the hurricanes in the southeastern U.S. In a crisis, people searching for critical info like hurricane shelters in Miami, SearchStack describes them getting back unreliable AI-generated lists that misled users or wasted their time.
Which is the last thing you need in an emergency.
Precisely. And social media feeds, Twitter, Facebook, they get flooded with content that seemed factual on the surface but contained incorrect details or ambiguous warnings. They even mentioned a specific example, a viral image for Hurricane Helene that was completely AI-generated, adding to the confusion. So SearchStack warns quite starkly that AI slop can easily dominate search engine rankings and social media algorithms.
Pushing the bad stuff to the top.
Exactly. Pushing a low-quality, maybe misleading content right up front, making it nearly impossible to navigate the web with confidence when you really need reliable information. This isn't just about convenience, it's about access to essential, sometimes life-saving knowledge.
That's a nightmare scenario, losing trust in basic information finding, especially when it matters most. What about the impact on education? You mentioned students using AI for homework?
Yes, the impact on education and learning is another area causing deep concern, with potentially huge long-term consequences. Audrey Waters' article, AI Slop Education, flags that alarming statistic from early 2023. Nearly 90% of college students surveyed said they'd use the chatbot to help with homework. And James Walsh, quoted elsewhere, puts it bluntly. This is short-circuiting the learning process.
Bypassing the actual learning part.
Essentially, yes. If students just get AI to write essays or answer questions, they miss the struggle, the critical thinking, the synthesis, the very things that lead to genuine understanding. But Waters argues very compellingly that it's not just about the text. She calls it a cultural and social problem that AI is kind of tapping into. She connects student disengagement, their willingness to use these tools, to a whole tangle of factors in modern education and society.
Like what kind of factors?
Things like incessant standardized testing in K-12, which she notes often squeezes out things like art, music, even recess, a focus on rote learning. Also, a frenzied emphasis on learning outcomes, not on the process of learning. This devalues the actual journey of figuring things out. Add to that the influence of screens, less reading for pleasure, the disruption of the pandemic, and these shifting ideas about why you even go to college. It's all job skills or nothing, as she puts it, rather than for knowledge itself.
Very instrumental view.
Exactly. Combine that with rising costs, inequality, a sense of maybe no future, so why bother? And in that context, Waters argues, the push-button oracle of essay generation makes a lot more sense than this ridiculous mess students feel they're in. AI becomes a tempting shortcut out of a system that feels broken to them.
That's a really powerful context from Waters. It reframes it not just laziness, but maybe a symptom of bigger issues. And what about the institutions themselves? You mentioned trust earlier.
Right. SearchStax backs this up, saying AI slop in higher education is particularly damaging because universities run on trust. If inaccurate or plagiarized AI content floods academia, it can seriously erode trust in the institution itself. Universities could lose their reputation as credible sources of knowledge.
Which undermines their whole purpose.
Absolutely. It threatens the value of degrees, research, everything. And Waters adds another layer here. She's very critical of AI companies like Anthropic and OpenAI making deals with universities. She doesn't see these as partnerships for learning. She views them as moves by these companies to extract more data and exploit new markets, basically turning students into lifelong customers. She says flat out these companies care nothing for the values or goals of the institutions. And she argues they treat academic integrity, especially proper citation, like an absolute joke, given how their models are trained by, in her words, stealing the work of others.
Strong words.
Very strong. It raises huge ethical questions about these partnerships and the potential commodification of education, maybe turning campuses into data sources for big tech.
So beyond the erosion of trust and the impact on education, what are the even broader societal implications that the sources point to? Where else does this AI slop issue ripple outwards?
Well, the broader societal implications are profound and, frankly, quite sobering, according to Waters in particular. One area she flags is corporate responsibility and misdirection. She uses Google's plan to roll out its Gemini chatbot to under 13s as a prime example. Given all the known risks with generative AI, things like potential sexual predation, addiction, mental health crises, misinformation, data extraction, and privacy violations, this is alarming. But what really concerns Waters is Google's messaging. They put the burden squarely on parents, telling parents to remind their child not to share sensitive information, help your child think critically, remind their child that Gemini isn't human.
Shifting the responsibility.
Exactly. Waters sees this as a clear deflection. Instead of the tech industry and institutions taking responsibility for the problems AI creates, the onus is dumped onto individuals, parents, kids, to navigate these dangers, rather than designing the tech more responsibly in the first place.
That's a significant critique. It sounds like she's arguing these aren't just tech problems, they're deeply social and political ones.
Precisely. And she goes further, warning about a more insidious effect: conformity and the undermining of critical faculties. She argues AI is actually engineering us for conformity, banality. This is a deep philosophical critique. She calls AI a technology of the apocalypse, even linking it to a larger political project of soft eugenics, where the rich get richer, the weak get sick, and the clever get to breed.
Oh, that's a statement.
It is very strong language, yes. It underlines her belief that AI is far from neutral. Her core conclusion is that AI isn't just about automating tasks like teaching. She believes it's about undermining knowing, undermining caring, undermining democracy. She then brings in Guy Debord's idea, reframing it for today. AI is not a collection of algorithms. Rather, it is a social relation among people mediated by algorithms. So AI isn't just a tool. It's actively reshaping how we relate to each other, how we think, our societal structures, potentially pushing us towards being more passive, less critical.
That is a really provocative idea. AI as a mediator changing social relations. And it brings up something I've heard mentioned, the cyclical problem. If AI trains on its own output, does the slop just get worse?
That's an excellent point. And yes, it points to this unsettling idea of self-reinforcing slop.
Hmm.
The Reddit discussion asks this exact question. If AI is trained on a source like Reddit, where more and more comments seem to be AI generated, doesn't that reinforce the negative aspects? In fact, dumbing it down.
A feedback loop of mediocrity.
Potentially, yes. A feedback loop where the growing amount of low-quality AI content online could actually degrade the quality of the data used to train future AIs, leading to a downward spiral. More slop trains, more slop. Audrey Waters touches on a similar idea using the term HowlRound. She describes it as the dangerous tendency of LLMs to glaze their users to provide responses that are self-reinforcing in both substance and style.
Glaze their user.
Yeah, essentially creating an echo chamber of blandness and conformity. It suggests a future where AI, if we're not careful, doesn't just produce slop, but kind of becomes slop at its core, creating a digital world that's increasingly repetitive and lacks genuine originality or insight.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful and honestly quite sobering. The sheer scale of this AI slop issue, the implications for trust, for education, for our critical thinking, it's huge.
Yeah.
So given all these challenges, what can we actually do? What are the actionable steps? What questions should you listening, us creating, be asking before we trust or maybe even publish AI-generated content? How do we navigate this responsibly?
Right, and this brings us back to something fundamental, the crucial role of human oversight in critical thinking. This comes through loud and clear from all our sources. It's positioned as the essential countermeasure to AI slop. The message from Forbes, from the UNU, from SearchStacks, it's really consistent. AI is an incredibly powerful tool. It offers amazing speed and efficiency. But, and this is the big, but it is not, and it really cannot be, a replacement for human judgment, for ethical consideration, for that nuanced understanding only we can bring. This idea of the indispensable human in the loop is absolutely paramount. Forbes states it plainly. AI is only as effective as the human mind reviewing it. And that AI content requires human intervention to ensure it sounds authentic and critically provides actual value.
So we need to stay involved.
Constantly. The UNU article reinforces this, saying, integrating ethical considerations, ongoing human oversight, and diverse data inputs is imperative for a truthful application of AI. They also call for AI developers to be transparent about their models' limitations and inaccuracies, a call for more accountability there. And SearchStacks advocates for a practical approach, keeping core principles like trust, relevancy, and transparency central, while using AI for augmentation, not replacement. So the collective message is clear. Our intelligence, our ethics, our diligent review must guide and refine AI's output. We're the gatekeepers of quality and truth, ultimately.
Okay, so it's not about ditching AI, but integrating it thoughtfully, keeping humans firmly in the driver's seat. Now, Forbes provided that list of 20 questions, which sounds really practical. Could you walk us through some of the main categories of questions we should be asking based on that?
Yes, that Forbes list is incredibly useful. It gives us a concrete way to apply that human oversight. It breaks down into several key areas for evaluating AI content, whether you're creating it or consuming it. First up is authenticity and brand voice. The questions here really push you to think about the content's identity. Things like, does this sound like the brand or person I'm writing for? It's about more than just facts. It's tone, style, personality. And that litmus test we mentioned, if the brand name was changed, would it need edits? If yes, rework it.
Make it specific.
Exactly, make it unique. Then there's the personal gut check. Would I say this? If not, Forbes says, figure out how to make it a yes through fact-checking, more research, adding your own nuance, and maybe the most basic, does this actually sound human? Check for that authenticity, that complexity, and engaging voice, not just that stiff, generic, soulless tone.
That's a great set of checks for authenticity. But sounding human isn't enough, is it? It also needs to be actually useful.
Absolutely. So the second category in Forbes is value and relevance. These questions focus on whether the content actually helps the audience. You need to ask, is this content truly helpful and relevant to my audience? That requires knowing who you're talking to and what they need. Then, is this worth reading and sharing? Think about the user experience. Will it benefit them? Does it position you as an expert, building trust? And crucially, does it provide unique value beyond what AI can generate alone? This means actively adding your human insight, your expertise, your original angle.
Your secret sauce.
Your unique signature, exactly. Forbes asks, did I add my own unique angle and knowledge to the piece? That's what makes it authentic and distinct. And a final practical check. Would this grab my attention if I stumbled across it? Does it spark curiosity, deliver real value, maybe even challenge assumptions, or just rehash old ideas?
And then, as we spent so much time discussing, the absolute core, truthfulness. How do the Forbes questions guide us there, especially with that tricky accuracy-truth divide?
Right. Third category, and maybe the most critical, accuracy and truthfulness. These are non-negotiable. You have to ask fundamentally, is it genuine? Meaning, is it true to its purpose? Does it have that human touch? And importantly, does it require fact-checking by a real person? The next question is essential, AI or not. Have I fact-checked this content? Forbes reminds us, AI isn't always accurate or up to date. Its knowledge has limits. So human review ensures credibility, relevance, and expert insight.
Yeah. You skip the fact check.
Never. And then, heading that core distinction we discussed, is this true or is this a hallucination? This is paramount. You have to ensure the AI's output aligns with what's true for regular people in the real world, especially given AI's known tendency to invent plausible-sounding falsehoods. Human discernment here is absolutely vital.
That covers quality and truth brilliantly. What about the why, the strategic side? How do we make sure using AI actually serves a purpose rather than just adding to the mountain of slop?
That's the final crucial piece, the strategic purpose and goals, making sure the content isn't just generated for the sake of it. So Forbes suggests asking, does it meet our standards and our audience's needs? Aligning with brand voice, guidelines, accuracy rules. For online content, is this content properly optimized for search? Checking links, sources, keywords, the technical side. But more deeply, what purpose do I want this content to serve? Is it just keyword fodder? Or is it meant to be meaty, compelling content that consumers engage with on a more meaningful level?
Having a clear goal.
A clear goal, yes. And if it's for business, how does this help meet my marketing goals? Does it move customers along, build the brand, achieve something specific? It shouldn't just be easy to generate, it needs to be effective. And finally, maybe the ultimate test, a question of professional integrity. Am I proud of this content? Would you stand by it? Is it unique? Is it valuable? If the answer is no, Forbes concludes pretty bluntly, it's not worth publishing.
That is an incredibly thorough framework. Authenticity, value, truth, purpose, and pride. It really drives home that irreplaceable human role. So what's the final overarching takeaway? The core message we should all carry forward from this deep dive?
I think the single most important thread, the one that binds everything together, is the ongoing imperative for critical thinking. The UNU article ends with that powerful statement. AI accuracy is not necessarily the truth. It's a constant reminder. It urges all of us users, creators, everyone to actively question and interpret AI outputs within broader societal and ethical frameworks. We need to ensure AI decisions are fair, equitable, and consistent with the true complexities of human experiences and environments. This isn't just about checking facts. It's about applying wisdom, context, ethics.
Our uniquely human skills.
Exactly. And Andre Waters' closing thought really resonates here too, that call for intellectual autonomy. Love yourself, love the world enough to think and learn. It just highlights how important it is to keep engaging our own minds, keep questioning, keep learning for ourselves, especially now with so much automated information. Your ability to think critically, to question, to seek context, to apply your own judgment, it's more valuable today than it has ever been.
This deep dive really has underscored that critical need for discernment, hasn't it? In this world increasingly driven by AI, it's so clear that while AI offers amazing efficiency, amazing potential, it also demands our constant vigilance, our critical thinking, our human touch. We have to make sure accuracy doesn't completely overshadow truth. It boils down to being informed, asking those tough questions, and remembering that the truly valuable insights, they still often come from that unique human perspective, from ethical thinking, and from that ongoing drive for genuine understanding.
Precisely. The challenge isn't really about fearing AI. It's about understanding its limitations, its potential pitfalls, and crucially, our responsibilities when we use it. By really focusing on the why and the so what behind the information, by constantly trying to connect the data points back to real-world truth and context. You, the listener, can navigate this new frontier confidently and, importantly, responsibly. Your ability to question, to seek, that deeper context, to apply your own judgment, it's your most powerful tool right now, more valuable than ever.
Thank you so much for joining us on this really essential deep dive today. If you found this discussion valuable, if it gave you food for thought, please do consider subscribing to our deep dives. Like this content if you found it useful, and please leave a comment. Share your own thoughts on AI, on content quality, on navigating this landscape. We genuinely appreciate your engagement as we continue to explore these important topics shaping our world.
Thank you for listening to VSOW.